23 years ago, a young film student in Utah vanished without a trace after a test shoot for an independent film project, leaving her family shattered in despair. Authorities suspected the young director she had been working with was involved, but with no body, no physical evidence of a crime, and the investigation eventually stalling out. Yet through all those years, her desperate mother never gave up hope, clinging to the slim chance that her daughter was still alive somewhere. Then one day, when the old case file was reopened, investigators uncovered a tiny detail that had been overlooked for more than a decade, a detail that would turn the entire case upside down and shock the entire Utah community. Before we dive into this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love true crime cases, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Utah, spring 2002. The Wasatch Range still had a late blanket of snow on its peaks, while below lay the quiet town stretching along the Salt Lake Valley. Life here moved slowly and was heavily shaped by the community and religious values that had defined the area for generations. Provo was a small university city where church bells mixed with the sound of student buses and the smell of coffee drifted from the little shops around the Brigham Young University campus. The local economy still revolved around education, light manufacturing, and religious services. The crime rate was so low that any incident would be the talk of the town for weeks. That spring, communication was mostly through landlines and slow email, and security cameras were only starting to appear along commercial corridors. In that peaceful setting, Rachel Linden, a senior film student, lived in an old student apartment complex near the university. To her friends, she was known as calm, serious, and someone who rarely deviated from her daily routine. In May of that year, Rachel agreed to participate in a lighting test for an independent short film project by a local director named Marcus Tate, who had been promoting himself as a promising young filmmaker in the Salt Lake area. The shoot was scheduled at an old warehouse complex in South Salt Lake that Tate had rented to build his set. That morning, Rachel left her apartment wearing a light-colored jacket and carrying a bag with a few script pages and a film drive. Neighbors saw her smiling as she walked to her car, the early season sunlight slanting across the hood of her silver Honda Civic. The car pulled out of the parking lot and merged into the light northbound traffic. After that, no one ever saw Rachel again. An employee at a convenience store near the industrial area vaguely remembered a young woman stopping to buy coffee before driving into the row of warehouses on West Temple, most of which had been abandoned. The gas station security footage was blurry, but it was enough to confirm a barely legible license plate that matched hers. By the time the sun set behind the mountains, Rachel's apartment remained dark and silent, the hallway light staying on all night. She didn't call her roommate and didn't come home as planned. Her cell phone had gone dead that morning, and all attempts at contact met silence. The next morning, as the new day began, Rachel's family in Cedar Hills called the Provo Police Department to report that their daughter had disappeared after a brief work meeting in South Salt Lake. The call came in at the start of the shift. The father's voice was calm but strained as he asked them to check on his daughter. The dispatcher passed it to the patrol unit in the area and confirmed Rachel Linden's address on the student apartment rental list. 2 officers were sent to the scene, approaching the 3-story building tucked behind late-blooming cherry trees. The apartment door was unlocked, but showed no signs of forced entry. Inside, everything was tidy. Storyboards still stacked on the desk, a mini DV camcorder on the shelf, the bed neatly made, and morning light slicing through half-drawn curtains. There were no signs of a struggle or a rushed departure. In the sink were a dirty plate and a glass still damp from recent use. The officers checked the closet and noted that the outfit she had worn the day before was missing, matching the witness descriptions. Her roommate, Emily Park, was called in for a statement. She said Rachel had told her she was going to a lighting test with an independent director named Marcus Tate and planned to be back before noon. By late evening, when she still wasn't home and her phone was disconnected, Emily thought she might be at a friend's, but by midnight, the worry became real. Neighbors confirmed there had been no unusual noises all day. They had only seen Rachel leave early that morning with her bag and a stack of papers. One resident below remembered hearing an engine start and a car door close, then silence again. The preliminary report read, "Victim left residence morning of 5/10, did not return, no contact." When they checked the parking lot, her silver Honda Civic was gone. They contacted Rachel's parents, who confirmed she had no plans to leave town, no personal conflicts, and no financial pressure. Initial checks with her bank and cell provider showed no credit card activity in the past 24 hours, and the phone signal lost since the previous morning. Given her stable academic record, finances, and lifestyle, investigators concluded the likelihood of her leaving voluntarily was very low. An official report was filed under case number 02RL175, classified as missing person, open investigation. The contact list was compiled, and Marcus Tate, the only person who had a scheduled meeting with Rachel on the day she vanished, was at the top. The final note on the report stated, "No signs of criminal activity at the residence, but the disappearance is deemed suspicious, expanded investigation required." From that initial report, the investigative team was tasked with reconstructing Rachel Linden's entire movements on the morning she disappeared. The first data came from the roommate and neighbors, confirming she left the apartment early, carrying her bag and script pages. Police canvassed the likely route from the Provo student housing area to the South Salt Lake industrial zone, where she was supposed to be working. A roughly 40-mile stretch along Interstate 15, the main artery connecting Provo to downtown Salt Lake City. Patrol units were deployed along the highway, checking rest stops, convenience stores, and gas stations she might have visited. In Lehi, a store clerk remembered a young woman with brown hair and a light-colored jacket buying coffee to go that morning. Police obtained the store's security footage. The image was grainy and noisy, but it clearly showed a silver Honda Civic at Pump 3, with a license plate that matched Rachel's character for character. The timestamp confirmed she was there within the estimated travel window. Further along the route, 2 other stores had no usable footage. Either their cameras were offline, or they only kept recordings for 3 days. The tech team checked the automated traffic system on I-15, but in 2002, there were no speed cameras or centralized data in Utah. After cross-referencing local maps, investigators narrowed the search to the South Salt Lake industrial area, specifically the old warehouses along West Temple, where Marcus Tate had rented a space. A security camera at a nearby trucking company's parking lot captured a silver Civic turning into the industrial complex that morning, slowing near the western row of warehouses, then disappearing from the frame. When zoomed in, the front of the car and a distinctive reflection on the door glass matched earlier witness descriptions. There was no footage of the car leaving afterward. The system only recorded 2 frames per second, making it impossible to identify who was inside. The technical report noted, footage sufficient to confirm victim's vehicle was present at the West Temple Industrial Complex on the day of disappearance. Officers continued checking entrances and exits and interviewed the former security guard for the warehouse area. He recalled a silver car entering that morning, but not leaving during his shift. The rear service gates had been chained shut for years, only the main entrance was in use. The visitor log showed no record of Rachel's car or name, suggesting whoever drove in may have had permission to enter without signing in, possible if they were with the tenant. By the end of the day, investigators had mapped her route with confirmed sightings, starting point at the student apartment, coffee stop in Lehi, and final confirmed location at the West Temple warehouse complex. All physical traces ended there. The summary report sent to the shift commander concluded, travel route established, victim's vehicle last seen at West Temple Industrial Warehouse Complex, South Salt Lake. After confirming the silver Honda Civic's final appearance on the security footage, the team conducted a full sweep of the West Temple Warehouse Row. That same afternoon, 2 patrol officers and the Salt Lake County Forensic Unit entered the area. They located a car parked against the north wall, about 50 meters from the main gate. A thin layer of dust on the hood and windshield indicated it had been stationary for at least 24 hours. The front tires were caked with dried mud. The license plate was an exact match for Rachel Linden's registration. The doors were locked, no signs of forced entry, windows closed, and the passenger side mirror slightly folded in as if bumped while parking. Inside, no key in the ignition, transmission in park. Looking through the glass, officers noted the driver's seat adjusted to the height Rachel normally used according to her roommate, the steering wheel clean, no signs of a struggle. Her purse was not on the passenger seat, the floor was empty, no obvious personal items. On the back seat were a small coil of electrical cord and 2 loose printed pages, illegible from outside. The body had no scratches, tires normally inflated. Police photographed the scene from multiple angles and measured the distance to the nearest warehouse door. Tire tracks showed the car had been parked there before the day of discovery and had not moved since. A small piece of paper under the wiper blade turned out to be an old parking receipt, unrelated. Area signage indicated the warehouses were managed by a local real estate company. Most units were rented for maintenance shops, several had been vacant for years. In the rental records, Warehouse Unit 4 was listed under Marcus Tate on a short-term lease for commercial video production. Police contacted the property office, verified the information, and obtained access permission. The company rep led them to Unit 4. The metal roll-up door was down and secured with a new padlock, faint fingerprints visible on the handle. The rep said Tate had signed the lease over a month earlier, usually came a few days a week, mostly mornings, and there had been no notice of vacating. Investigators checked adjacent units, most empty, a few holding old materials, none active. They returned to where the Civic was parked and confirmed it was less than 10 meters from Unit 4's door. Front tire tracks stopped near a drainage grate, parallel to the entrance. A faint skid mark on the asphalt could have been from turning or a sudden stop. No drag marks or collision damage around the car. All findings were immediately documented with timestamps and GPS coordinates. The forensic team dusted for prints and photographed every surface of the vehicle. Preliminary results: no blood. No signs of violence, no unfamiliar shoe prints. The scene report stated, vehicle intact, locked from outside, no physical evidence of conflict. Before leaving, the lead officer ordered the Honda Civic sealed as temporary evidence and towed to the Provo PD, secure impound, for full forensic examination. Unit 4 was also sealed, posted with "Do Not Enter" signs, and placed under investigative hold. The entire area was cordoned with yellow tape. The final note read, victim's vehicle located at West Temple Warehouse Complex, intact, no signs of struggle, adjacent unit rented by Marcus Tate. Finding Rachel Linden's car at the West Temple Warehouse Complex with no sign it had moved in over a day prompted the shift commander to escalate the case. The original patrol report was transferred to the Major Crimes Unit, which handles missing persons cases suspected of criminal involvement. In the summary sent upstairs, the reporting officer assessed, personal vehicle recovered in industrial area, victim no contact for 36 hours, no evidence of voluntary departure. The report went to Lieutenant Joseph Kern, head of Major Crime Investigations, who immediately ordered a formal criminal investigation opened. First steps included securing the full scene perimeter, compiling a potential witness list, and identifying the last people known to have contact with the victim. Based on the patrol notes, Marcus Tate, the tenant of Unit 4, and the director who had direct contact with Rachel, was placed at the top of the list. A temporary scene hold order was signed, effective until forensic processing was complete. In an urgent afternoon briefing, Lieutenant Kern assigned tasks. One team to gather Rachel's personal background, bank records, email, travel habits, the other to dig into Marcus Tate's history, employment, criminal record if any, personal relationships. The forensic unit was brought in to analyze physical evidence on the vehicle and inside the sealed warehouse. The investigation plan prioritized confirming the exact time the car arrived, identifying the last person to see Rachel alive, and clarifying her connection to Tate through the film project. Tech officers were authorized to pull all area security footage, including neighboring businesses, trucking company, storage facilities, and gas stations along the West Temple access roads. A phone record request was sent to the carrier for Rachel's location data in the 72 hours prior to disappearance, though cell tower triangulation in 2002 was still primitive. The administrative unit contacted Salt Lake City authorities to verify Tate's lease details, purpose, and duration. Police also reached out to BYU's registrar for Rachel's academic records and class lists to find anyone who might know her schedule. By noon, the detailed investigation plan was submitted to the chief and approved. The operational assessment stated the disappearance bore suspicious markers: victim unlikely to have left voluntarily, vehicle found in an illogical location, a connected individual with access to the scene before and after the disappearance. Lieutenant Kern's memo to the team concluded: Priority 1, determine victim status. Priority 2, verify actions and statements of warehouse tenant. All further actions were to follow criminal procedure protocol and be fully documented. The case file was officially reclassified as Case #02RL175. Rachel Linden suspicious missing. Timestamp May 12, 2002, 14:20. Moment the case was upgraded to major crimes level. That same afternoon, immediately after the investigation plan was approved, the Major Crimes Unit forensic team returned to the West Temple Industrial Complex to search Warehouse Unit 4, the space rented by Marcus Tate and the closest location to where Rachel Linden's car was found. The main gate was unlocked with a key provided by the property company. 2 officers secured the perimeter while the techs worked. The heavy metal roll-up door was raised slowly, the screech echoing in the empty space. As natural light poured in, dust floated in the air, revealing a roughly 200-square-meter warehouse with high ceilings, gray-painted walls, and a glossy epoxy-coated concrete floor that reflected the flashlights. The air was thick with the smell of solvents and fresh industrial paint. To the left of the door stood a lighting rig, 3 halogen stands, 2 still plugged into the wall. In the center was a large metal table bolted to the floor, its surface flat with thin scratches as if from something sharp dragged across it. Nearby lay a large roll of nylon plastic, half unrolled and dusted with white powder. A camera tripod leaned against the wall, no camera attached, its legs coated in fine dust. On wooden shelves in the corner were cans of paint, solvent bottles, and rolls of industrial tape, one can still wet around the rim. Everything was neatly arranged, yet somehow felt recently rearranged. Police noted no visible body or blood. They swept the walls, floor, and table with UV light, picking up only faint chemical glow from the epoxy. Forensic team leader, Officer Renee Clark, directed panoramic photos and marked sampling zones. Technicians collected epoxy samples from 3 spots on the floor and the metal table, scraping thin layers with a blade into sealed evidence bags. Next to the paint cans they found a retractable utility knife with a black plastic handle. Its blade had paint matching the floor color, sealed as evidence. 4. Beside the work table was a half-used box of latex gloves, 3 pairs still inside, the box rim dusted gray. On another shelf were a few plastic cups, 2 empty water bottles, and a box of duct tape. The entire space was dusted for prints and photographed per protocol. At least 12 partial fingerprints were lifted from metal surfaces, the clearest 2 on the table edge and main door handle. Under UV, the epoxy coating glowed unevenly, some areas thicker, some thinner, suggesting it had been applied over an existing layer. A small soil sample near the wall was taken and noted as possible original paint chips. Power was still on. Wiring ran to a temporary panel. Tate had installed, labeled by hand in marker, light test 1, 2, 3. A single plastic chair next to the metal table had no dust, indicating recent use. The team recorded everything on video, including old tire marks visible on the floor just inside the door. No blood, biological material, or suspicious objects were found. The scene report stated, no traces of violence or body, located scene unusually clean, fresh solvent odor, evidence of recent recoating. Main evidence items, 3 epoxy samples, 1 utility knife, latex glove box, and paint chips, were sealed in containers labeled 02 RL175, X1 through X5. Before leaving, The forensic team locked the door, applied official seals, and signed the log with the property rep present. The search report was transmitted to headquarters at 1945 that day, with the preliminary conclusion, scene abnormally clean, chemical and paint sample analysis required to determine timing and purpose of recent work. Immediately after completing the search and sealing of the crime scene, the Major Crimes Unit summoned Marcus Tate to the police station for questioning as the last person known to have had contact with the victim. He arrived on time for the appointment, wearing a white dress shirt, carrying a document bag, and appearing calm and cooperative. The statement recorded that Tate confirmed he had met Rachel Linden on the morning of the day she went missing. According to him, the purpose was solely to conduct a light test for an independent short film project he was producing. He explained in detail that Rachel arrived at the warehouse mid-morning, bringing the script, reviewed the lighting sketch with him, and shot a few short test scenes using a mini DV camcorder. According to him, the session lasted no more than 2 hours, and Rachel left afterward in her own vehicle, completely normally, with no arguments or conflicts. When asked why her car was still at the scene, Tate appeared surprised and said he did not know why it was there. Perhaps she returned to pick something up or met someone else. He insisted he did not keep her keys or any personal belongings and suggested she might have gotten a ride from someone without telling him. Police noted Tate's reactions: steady voice, direct eye contact, no visible nervousness when questioned about her disappearance. When pressed further about their personal relationship, Tate explained they only knew each other through the student film community, having met at a technical cinematography workshop, and were not close. He said he chose Rachel because she had lighting knowledge and wanted to audition her for a short project he was writing. Regarding the project, he presented a script summary and a rental equipment list, stating he was self-funding it with personal money. The investigative team noted Tate used clear language but avoided specific questions about exact departure times. When asked to recount the morning sequence again, he provided approximate times, met Rachel late morning, left afternoon, could not recall the exact moment. Police cross-checked with the Industrial Park's administrative log. Tate had signed in early that day, but there was no recorded sign-out time. When questioned about repainting the warehouse floor, Tate explained he had just finished applying an epoxy coating to prepare the set and covered it because the old floor was stained, purely for technical reasons, unrelated to Rachel's disappearance. He also said the lingering solvent smell was normal in film workshops. Asked why the equipment rig in the warehouse was empty and there was no camera, Tate said he had taken the camera home to extract footage since no official scenes had been recorded yet. He provided his home address and offered to submit the test tape the following day. His demeanor throughout the interview was described as calm, controlled, and frequently relying on technical reasoning to explain every detail. When police asked whether he had contacted Rachel after the meeting, Tate said no, assuming the test was finished and he was waiting for her email response. He said he had received no further word from her since that day. The investigator's notes indicated no clear points to refute the statement. The timeline, location, and events Tate described did not directly contradict the information they had, except for the fact Rachel's vehicle was found still at the scene. At the end of the session, he signed the statement, agreed to allow search of his filming equipment and apartment if needed. Police temporarily classified Tate as a key witness, not detained. In the internal report, Lieutenant Kern noted, subject displayed cooperation, consistent statement, no conflicting physical evidence yet, need to verify timeline data and filming equipment. The interview concluded after nearly 3 hours. Tate left the station under observation by 2 officers, and the entire content of the meeting was preserved on audio recording number 02 or L175 TW1. Immediately after Marcus Tate's interview ended, the physical evidence collected during the search of warehouse number 4 was transferred to the Utah State Crime Lab for examination. The transfer log listed 3 epoxy paint samples from the floor and metal table, 1 folding utility knife, a box of latex gloves containing 3 remaining pairs, and several small paint chips scattered around the work area. The forensic unit received and separated each sample for standard chemical and biological testing. In the first-day report, technicians noted the epoxy layer recovered from the floor contained standard industrial resin used for waterproofing, with no unusual color or contaminants. Fluorescence analysis and electron microscope surface scanning detected no tissue or organic material. The samples were treated with DNA extraction solution, but yielded negative results. The plastic-handled utility knife was closely examined. The blade tip had paint residue matching the floor epoxy, no dried blood or unusual scratches. Fingerprint lifting recovered 4 clear prints, all matching the reference prints Tate provided at the station. No second set of prints was found. The latex gloves in the box had light epoxy dust on the cuffs, indicating use during painting. However, no organic material or sweat residue was present inside. All samples were deemed clean by forensic standards. The lab additionally tested the knife blade and paint cans under UV light. No characteristic hemoglobin fluorescence appeared. For certainty, they performed the Kastle-Meyer test, also negative. This ruled out the presence of human blood within the collected samples. Additionally, technicians analyzed other inorganic items found in the warehouse. A white powder sample near the nylon roll was identified as talc mixture, commonly used to prevent plastic sheeting from sticking, biologically irrelevant. While reviewing the evidence inventory, they discovered one unopened mini DV tape. The tape was hand-labeled Light Test 502, matching the date of Rachel's disappearance. When played, the device reported tape damage. The image showed only white noise streaks and background hum. The unit decided to forward the tape to the digital media recovery section, but due to edge warping and slight moisture damage, immediate processing was not possible. The preliminary report noted low likelihood of image recovery, specialized equipment required. Otherwise, no additional evidence showed signs of violence. The examiners unanimously concluded the scene had been thoroughly cleaned, most likely repainted shortly before inspection. All samples reflected a normal industrial workspace with no obvious criminal elements. When the results were returned to Provo Police Department, Lieutenant Kern noted in the consolidated report, forensic examination found no biological evidence or signs of crime in samples. Utility knife and epoxy consistent with construction use. Videotape not yet analyzable. Although the results provided no progress, the forensic file was fully retained under evidence codes 02 RL 175 EX1 through EX5. The investigative team continued to keep the warehouse sealed and requested all evidence be preserved in original condition for possible future analysis. In the internal evaluation memo, Kern added, "Scene shows intentional staging, but no charging elements yet. Forensic results confirm clean environment. Investigation should shift toward victims' social connections and warehouse lessee." With these results, the case temporarily lacked grounds to move to prosecution phase, although the entire team agreed Rachel Linden's disappearance could not be explained by an ordinary test shoot alone. When the forensic results returned without new leads, the Major Crimes Unit decided to expand the search perimeter around warehouse number 4 to determine which direction Rachel Linden may have left or whether external evidence existed. A team of 8 officers plus 2 crime scene technicians was deployed within a 2-mile radius of the West Temple Industrial Park. The morning was dry with strong winds. Desert dust from the west blew heavily into the warehouse area, making the sweep difficult. Teams divided into 3 directions, along the main road leading to the highway, along the drainage ditch running parallel north of the warehouses, and the vacant lot behind the industrial park that once served as an abandoned construction materials yard. In the western sector, the first team checked the adjacent warehouse row. Most units were locked, some vacant for years, walls peeling, floors thick with dust. No signs of illegal entry or unusual drag marks. Another team moved along the nearly 300-meter drainage ditch. Water was shallow, only stained mud and industrial trash remained. They used drag hooks and metal detectors. Results yielded only empty cans and a broken wire segment. Mud samples were taken for possible biological traces, but nothing unusual was visible. The vacant lot behind the complex was considered the priority area, as it could have been used for parking or concealing evidence. The site, formerly a construction staging yard, now consisted of cracked concrete slabs, overgrown with weeds and small rain-washed depressions. Under harsh sunlight, officers marked grids and swept in fan patterns, examining each 10-meter section thoroughly. They looked for drag marks, tire tracks, or any personal items that might belong to Rachel, but the ground was hard and dry with no tire or footwear impressions. A K-9 unit was brought in and walked the perimeter of warehouse number 4 and the vacant lot. The dog paused briefly near the industrial trash bins, then moved on without strong alert. At the southwest corner of the lot, one officer discovered a sheet of paper wedged under a broken concrete chunk, yellowed and crumpled. Upon retrieval, he recognized it as an A4 script page. The title was faded, but still readable, as Glass Angel. Scene 7. The content below consisted of several dialogue lines with blue ballpoint notes on lighting angles and lamp intensity, typical film student annotations. The page was placed in an evidence bag and labeled EX6. Preliminary comparison with documents recovered from Rachel's apartment confirmed the same formatting and font she customarily used for assignments. It was highly likely the printout Rachel brought to the test shoot. Though minor, this was the first physical trace of her outside the apartment. The surrounding area was searched for an additional 3 hours. No further related items were found. During the sweep, investigators noted the area had no surveillance cameras and neighboring businesses were closed on weekends, yielding no additional witnesses. After completion, the search map was updated with checked zones and the script page location marked. The consolidated report sent to headquarters stated, "No body, no signs of struggle, sole item recovered is Glass Angel script page found in vacant lot west of West Temple Warehouse Complex, most likely blown by wind or discarded during work." Although the search produced no new investigative direction, Lieutenant Kern noted internally that the script page reinforced the theory Rachel was indeed present at the warehouse on the day she vanished. The entire industrial park remained in original condition for continued monitoring, and the scene was returned to city security under temporary lockdown pending further orders from Major Crimes Unit. When the expanded search concluded, without significant additional traces, the Major Crimes Unit compiled all investigative results from the 2 weeks since Rachel Linden was reported missing. The consolidated report exceeded 100 pages and included the scene examination record, forensic evidence results, statements from Marcus Tate and related witnesses, and the search area map. In the assessment section, Lieutenant Kern wrote clearly, "No direct evidence proving the victim was assaulted or deceased. Scene shows no traces of violence. Evidence clean, no second-party DNA." The forensic report confirmed the epoxy, utility knife, latex gloves, and dust samples were all negative for biological testing. Rachel's Honda Civic was thoroughly examined. Interior undamaged, no blood, no signs of struggle, only the owner's fingerprints. The discovery of the Glass Angel script page was recorded as supporting evidence of the victim's presence at the warehouse, but insufficient for inferring criminal conduct. In the general findings section, Kern wrote, "No physical elements exist proving coercion or harm. Motive and purpose of the visit are reasonable within the victim's professional context." The team also found no evidence Tate had personal conflicts or prior record. Multiple interviews and background checks showed he worked freelance, had a legal warehouse lease, stable finances, and no signs of fraud in transactions. Analysis of Rachel's bank and phone records revealed no contacts beyond project-related exchanges. Based on these findings, the investigative unit recommended suspending the file due to lack of specific criminal elements, no confirmed victim. The report submitted to the Salt Lake District Attorney's Office received no request for further prosecution, so the case was administratively reclassified, inactive case. In the appendix, Kern recommended long-term storage of all evidence, including the 3 epoxy samples, utility knife, gloves, script page, and damaged mini-DV tape for the required 10 years. The items were resealed, labeled 02RL175-6 series, and transferred to the State Central Evidence Vault. The Digital Records section archived copies of all photographs, reports, and scene diagrams in the internal system. Patrol units were withdrawn from the West Temple warehouse, and the lockdown was lifted after city confirmation. Before closing, Kern added a final note to the consolidated report. Rachel Linden's current status remains undetermined, possibilities of voluntary departure or accident not ruled out. Insufficient elements for criminal charges. The report was signed at the end of June 2002, marking the end of the active investigation phase. The file was stamped inactive, missing person unresolved, and officially transferred to the Provo Police Department Archives section. All team members signed the turnover form, noting the recommendation that if new physical evidence or witnesses emerged in the future, the case could be reactivated. After completing the procedures, all physical evidence in the Rachel Linden case was officially transferred to the Utah State Criminal Archives for long-term preservation in accordance with established protocols. The handover took place at Evidence Vault Number 3 of the Provo Police Department under the supervision of state representatives and the Internal Affairs Division. The evidence containers were resealed with new security seals, labeled with identification code case #02RL175, and included 3 epoxy samples extracted from the floor and metal table, a utility knife with a plastic handle, a box of latex gloves containing 3 remaining gloves, the movie script, Glass Angel, recovered from the vacant lot, and a damaged mini-DV tape stored in a moisture-proof case. Everything was placed inside 2 stainless steel sealed containers equipped with coded locks and labeled according to the state's evidence coding system. The handover report clearly recorded the date, time, and signatures of Lieutenant Joseph Kern, the forensic technician, and the archive representative. Photographic data, examination reports, and all investigation reports were copied onto a CD-ROM, assigned a separate code, and stored together with the case file. The administrative office recorded a default retention period of 10 years from the date of transfer, after which, in the absence of a request for reinvestigation, the file would be moved to permanent state-level storage. The evidence items were placed on Shelf 7, Row D, in the climate and humidity-controlled metal storage warehouse. The electronic database system updated the case information into the catalog Unresolved Missing Persons 2000-2005, where each case is assigned a unique retrieval code, displaying the victim's name, year of disappearance, and investigation status. On the registration screen, the entry 02RL175, Rachel Linden Provo PD, inactive was entered, marking the completion of the administrative process. A paper copy of the file was retained at the Central Records Office in Salt Lake City, while the original remained in the evidence vault. The Provo Chief of Police signed off on the closure report, confirming that all investigative steps had been properly completed in accordance with regulations and that no further operational actions were ongoing. The investigators assigned to the team were reassigned to other cases. The West Temple warehouse was released from lockdown, and control was returned to the real estate company that owned the property. From that point forward, the Rachel Linden missing person case officially became a cold case within the Utah State Catalog, with all evidence and documentation coded, sealed, and archived in the cold file system to await possible reactivation upon the emergence of new leads. Once the Rachel Linden file was moved to archive status, Marcus Tate, the individual who had been the primary person of interest during the initial investigation, was no longer subject to direct surveillance. Lacking evidence of criminal activity and with no legal justification to keep him under observation, the Provo Police Department closed Tate's personal file in the witness list, retaining only basic information regarding his address, Idaho number, and professional license. In the months that followed, Tate continued to live in the Salt Lake area and worked on a few small commercial film projects, mostly local business advertising videos. However, according to records from the Utah Division of Corporations and Commercial Code, the media company he had registered, Tate Creative Media ceased operations only a few months later due to failure to renew its tax permit. 1 year later, his residential record disappeared from local civil systems and was replaced by a new address in Reno, Nevada, where he registered temporary residency upon relocating his activities. Police had no reason to maintain contact or monitor his movements, as every report had concluded there were no signs of criminal behavior and no clear motive or conflict in connection with the Rachel Linden case. During that period, local media briefly reported on the disappearance of a BYU student who vanished without a trace, but the story quickly faded, and Marcus Tate's name appeared only in passing as one of the people who had worked with her. According to state administrative records, Tate registered a new Nevada address listing his occupation as film consultant before moving to the Sacramento, California area around mid-2004. Within the independent film community, he continued to appear on a few online forums, discussing shooting and post-production techniques, and occasionally sharing photos from old test shoots. No one in that circle was aware of his connection to the Utah disappearance, and no agency had authority to re-interview him once the case was officially closed. The Provo Records Office only periodically updated residency data through the federal system without further intervention. Lieutenant Kern's final report noted, "Subject Marcus Tate, no longer within investigative scope. No evidence of criminal activity, no grounds for surveillance warrant. All activity after September 2002 falls under the jurisdiction of his new state of residence." By the end of the year, the original investigation team was disbanded. The Rachel Linden case was classified as a cold case, and Tate left Utah entirely, leaving behind an empty rental apartment and a terminated studio lease. Many years later, when civil records were digitized, his name remained only in the database of dissolved businesses. Rachel's disappearance and Tate's withdrawal from the industry were no longer mentioned by anyone. No unit continued to track or question him. In the archived file, the final note under the potential suspect section of case #02RL175 reads briefly, "Marcus Tate, left state current address updated per federal data. No criminal conduct recorded. No evidence to justify continued monitoring." From that point on, his name disappeared from operational reports, and the Rachel Linden case gradually slipped into the silence of archived storage. 13 years later, when Utah's criminal case files began to be digitized, unresolved missing persons cases were transferred for review by the newly established Cold Case Unit in Salt Lake City. In October 2015, Detective Elaine Harper, a veteran investigator with more than 20 years of service, was assigned to lead the review of files categorized as Missing Persons 1998-2005. Her task was to screen cases with potential for re-examination using modern forensic technology. Harper worked on the ground floor of the State Justice Building, where hundreds of boxes of paper files had accumulated over the years. She began filtering cases according to criteria: disappearances with no recovered body, evidence still intact under original seals, and no prior digital forensic testing. During the review, the Rachel Linden file quickly caught her attention. The folder cover bore the code case #02RL175, labeled inactive. Provo PD, along with a handwritten note by Lieutenant Joseph Kern, "Unusually clean scene, evidence preserved, mini DV tape not yet recovered." Harper opened the corresponding evidence container and found the inventory list consisting of epoxy samples, utility knife, latex gloves, the Glass Angel script, and the damaged videotape, all still sealed exactly as they had been in 2002. She noted that this case had several distinguishing features compared to most missing persons files. The victim was a film student, the last known location was a private film studio, and the evidence primarily related to image production and chemicals. In her internal notes, Harper flagged the case for the priority digital review list because most data from that era had never been processed with modern image recovery or trace DNA technology available in 2015. Her initial report to the Cold Case Unit supervisor stated, "Case #02RL175 has potential to yield DNA samples or recoverable video data." recommend reopening for forensic analysis. After receiving approval, Harper spent weeks studying all original documentation, the West Temple Warehouse search reports, Marcus Tate's statements, forensic results, and the investigation summary. She noticed an unusual consistency in the scene description. Everything was too clean, too uniform, with no minor discrepancies between statements and physical evidence. In her experience, such scenes were rarely natural, especially in an industrial environment. Harper decided to make the Rachel Linden case her flagship file for the year. In her selection memorandum, she wrote, "Victims and evidence connection to film production raises the possibility of recoverable visual data. Recovery could yield behavioral evidence." The proposal was approved at the end of November 2015, authorizing Detective Elaine Harper direct access to the State Archive Evidence Vault to examine the physical condition of the Rachel Linden file. Immediately after receiving approval, she scheduled the work and completed the paperwork to break the seals. On the morning of November 25, 2015, Harper arrived at the Utah State Evidence Repository to conduct the unsealing process for the containers related to the case. The repository is a low concrete building managed by an automated code system with year-round stable temperature. Together with the supervising technician, she opened Cabinet Row D, Shelf 7, where the evidence box labeled #14988, corresponding to case #02RL175 was stored. The seal on the lid was intact. The label showed the last sealing date of June 27, 2002, signed by Lieutenant Joseph Kern. After inspecting the seal, Harper signed the unsealing log and began the examination. Inside, the items were neatly arranged in anti-static protective bags, 3 epoxy samples labeled EX1 through EX3, 1 plastic-handled utility knife EX4, 1 box of latex gloves EX5, the Glass Angel script EX6, and the mini DV tape box EX7. Everything remained double-sealed, the inner plastic bags undamaged, and the red wax seals intact. Harper checked each item against the original inventory. The epoxy samples had hardened, their surfaces still reflective, metallic gray color, matching the 2002 forensic report. The utility knife was individually packed in a metal case, blade free of rust, with visible paint residue on the tip. The box of latex gloves still contained 3 gloves, one showing white powder residue at the cuff, all preserved without mold. Finally, she opened the plastic case, holding the mini DV tape. Inside, the tape lay in a desiccant pouch with a marker note. "Damaged requires specialized recovery equipment." Holding the tape under light, Harper observed slight warping at the edges, but no rot or severe deformation. She determined this was the most valuable item in the file because it could contain direct footage of the test shoot. The last moment Rachel Linden was seen. Following protocol, she immediately requested transfer of the tape to the Utah Crime Lab for digital recovery. A transfer document was prepared, transport code UC 15-2214, stating, "Purpose, video data recovery. Evidence item, EX7, case #02RL175. Additionally, Harper ordered new polarized light photography of all evidence to document condition before removal from storage. High-resolution images were saved to the state hard drive and added to the electronic file. After completing the inspection, she resealed the remaining items and returned them to their original location, keeping only the mini DV tape in a special anti-tamper envelope. Before leaving the vault, Harper added the second case note entry, "Evidence in good condition, no deterioration." Mini DV tape is the only item likely to contain original data. Transferring to Utah Crime Lab for digital recovery next week. Copies of the unsealing report and supporting photographs were sent to the Cold Case Unit office, officially initiating the first re-examination of Rachel Linden evidence after 13 years of being forgotten. On December 3, 2015, the mini DV tape labeled X7 was received at the Utah Crime Lab's Digital Media Recovery section. The tape was placed in a 19 degrees Celsius stabilization chamber for acclimatization before processing. Lead technician David Sloan examined the tape surface under magnification and noted that the magnetic layer remained intact, with only minor edge warping from long-term storage. He chose to use a Sony DSR 1500A recovery deck with a slow read head to avoid tearing the tape. The data transfer process took nearly 2 hours. Most of the tape showed only white noise interspersed with crackling from the old signal path. However, toward the end, the system detected stable video for slightly more than 40 seconds. The recovered segment was exported in digital format under code UC15-2214-REC. When played back, the footage showed a large room with gray walls and diagonal white light from halogen lamps, the exact lighting setup described in the 2002 report for Warehouse Bay 4. In the frame, Rachel Linden appeared in front of the metal table wearing a light-colored jacket, hair tied back, adjusting a tripod. The image was grainy, but her face was clearly recognizable due to the light reflection. From off-camera, a male voice spoke in a low register, giving a short command, "Stand still." Rachel stopped moving and turned toward the lens as if awaiting direction. Then a small metallic scraping sound was heard, metal dragging across the floor, followed by a slight camera shake that tilted the frame. For about 2 seconds the image blurred, possibly from the camera being bumped or struck. Next came a heavy thud, followed by rapid breathing. The technician zoomed the audio waveform and identified 2 overlapping voices. A brief female exclamation, then a long sliding sound and labored breathing. At the 40-second mark, the video cut abruptly to static and went blank. Signal analysis showed the remaining tape had been overwritten or bulk erased, leaving only a few milliseconds of unreadable data. Sloan and the team applied noise reduction filters and frequency separation. After processing, they produced a cleaner audio track in which "Stand Still" was clear, followed by the metallic slide, a heavy impact, and low-frequency bands, suggesting an object weighing 20 to 30 pounds striking the floor. The technical report stated, video duration total 42 seconds, containing identifiable footage of victim Rachel Linden and an unidentified male voice. Ends with impact sounds and sudden signal interruption, likely caused by forced shutdown or camera drop. Digital copies were saved to drive UC15-2214D, with 2 backups sent to the cold case unit and the state prosecutor's office. The accompanying report noted the video showed no evidence of post-production editing and matched the recording time of early May 2002, consistent with Rachel's disappearance. Harper was present for the first playback of the recovered clip. She watched the entire segment in silence, taking detailed notes on posture, lighting positions, gaze direction, and camera angle. From the frames, she determined the camera was approximately 3 meters from the victim, at shoulder height, pointed toward the center of the metal table, the exact area the 2002 team had described as the warehouse focal point. The presence of a single off-screen male voice strengthened the likelihood that a second person was in the room. Harper requested still frames from the clearest images, 4 photos of Rachel, 1 of the metal table, and 1 capturing a metallic reflection on the right edge, possibly the utility knife or a filming tool. The lab confirmed the data was preserved without red errors. Harper's summary report to cold case leadership stated, "Successful recovery of 42-second video segment. Footage confirms Rachel Linden's presence inside West Temple Warehouse, contains male voice command 'Stand Still', followed by impact sounds and abrupt end. No further data on tape. The video was resealed on a secure drive, HA-256 encrypted, and stored in the state system." Harper added the 3rd case note entry, December 4, 2015, "Successful recovery of direct visual evidence, first confirmation of victim at scene. Recommend advanced audio analysis for voice identification and signal source tracing." After the 42-second video was successfully recovered, the Utah Crime Lab forwarded all audio data to the Specialized Audio Forensics Section for waveform separation, noise reduction, and sound source identification. On December 7, 2015, senior audio technician Laura Brenner took charge of processing the recording using SpecLab spectral analysis software and the state's proprietary frequency isolation system. The goal was to clarify the faint background sounds and determine the nature of the impacts in the final 10 seconds. When the full spectrogram was enlarged, Brenner observed, in addition to the already documented male and female voices, a continuous low-frequency band lasting approximately 7 seconds with stable amplitude between 60–80 Hz, characteristic of heavy object friction against a hard surface. After removing background noise, she identified it as a dragging sound with 3 brief pauses and 1 sudden stop, consistent with a heavy object being pulled across concrete. The frequency range and intensity suggested a pulling force of 40 to 50 kilograms, far exceeding the weight of lightweight items, such as a tripod or light stand. Immediately afterward, came a rapid series of uneven amplitude sounds identified as accelerated breathing, rising from 14 to over 30 breaths per minute, indicative of stress or fear response. The female voice during this period grew weaker and fragmented, showing no coherent speech, only labored breathing. The male voice became clearer, speaking in short, low phrases insufficient for word identification, but spectral analysis placed the fundamental frequency at approximately 110 Hz, consistent with an adult male aged 25–35. Comparison with the internal voice database yielded no exact match, but the characteristics aligned with the type of microphone used in early 2000s SUP mini DV camcorders, meaning no external sound source was present in the room. Brenner concluded that all audio was captured live on location with no post-production insertion. Further analysis of the video's opening revealed 3 soft metallic clicks before the male command, "Stand still," followed by a brief tone resembling an electrical switch or handheld tool activation. Timing delays indicated the speaker was 2 to 3 meters from the microphone, in the same direction as Rachel's position in frame. When the timeline was reconstructed, the audio clearly depicted the sequence: male command, metallic movement, accelerating breathing, heavy impact, then several seconds of dragging a heavy object. The 12-page technical report concluded, audio sample contains abnormal mechanical and biological elements. Low-frequency bands and rapid breathing indicate human physical response under duress or coercion. Final prolonged sound exhibits characteristics of heavy object displacement, most likely a human body. Brenner noted no evidence of editing or splicing, confirming the events occurred continuously in the same space. Upon receiving the results, Detective Harper visited the lab to listen to the cleaned audio track directly. She replayed the final segment multiple times, now able to distinguish the panicked breathing and heavy dragging that had been buried in the original noise. In her internal notes, she wrote, "Audio analysis confirms signs of violence at the scene. Rapid breathing and heavy dragging occur immediately after the standstill command. No indication of rehearsal or staging." Harper immediately backed up all data to the cold case unit's encrypted drive, attaching Brenner's report and detailed spectrograms. By the end of the day, she completed a preliminary conclusion memorandum stating, "Audio evidence authenticates the presence of coercive or assaultive behavior. Video and audio data match the physical description of the West Temple warehouse, strengthening the hypothesis that the victim was subdued on site." For the first time since 2002, the Rachel Linden file contained clear indications of violence. After the audio analysis report was completed and confirmed signs of coercion, the cold case unit continued to request that the Utah Crime Lab expand examination of the remaining physical evidence, focusing on 3 sealed epoxy paint samples from 2002. On December 15, 2015, the biology lab received the evidence box containing samples X1 through X3, consisting of hardened epoxy fragments removed from the floor, the metal tabletop, and the wall edge of warehouse number 4. Under the scanning electron microscope, technician Maya Holt discovered in sample X2, the portion taken from the edge of the metal table, a tiny fiber embedded beneath the thick epoxy layer, approximately 2 centimeters long, thin as a thread, and light brown in color. The surrounding epoxy surface showed that the fiber had adhered while the paint was still wet, proving it was present before the coating dried. Holt used a microscalpel to separate the paint layer under the microscope and recovered the fiber intact, then placed it in DNA preservation solution. The differential centrifugation extraction yielded an extremely small amount of DNA, but sufficient for amplification via PCR. The sample was coded UC15-2412 and sent to the genetics analysis section. After 3 days of processing, the results showed the sample contained mitochondrial DNA of female sex, with high probability of human origin. Based on old identification records, the cold case unit contacted Rachel Linden's parents in Cedar Hills and requested reference samples for confirmation. 2 buccal swabs were collected and immediately sent to the lab. On December 22, the official results were released. The mitochondrial DNA sequence from the fiber matched 99.98% with the DNA of Linda Linden, the victim's mother. The forensic report stated, specimen UC15-2412 has a genetic origin corresponding to the maternal line of Rachel Linden. Probability of random match within the regional population below 0.02%. Conclusion: the recovered fiber is human hair belonging to the victim. This was the first time in 13 years that investigators obtained direct biological evidence confirming Rachel's presence at the West Temple warehouse. Upon receiving the lab notification, Detective Harper immediately updated the electronic case file and noted in her duty log, hair fiber discovered in 2002 sealed epoxy layer, confirmed DNA match to victim's mother. Random match probability essentially 0. This is the first physical evidence proving the victim was present and likely died at the scene. The report submitted to cold case unit leadership and the state prosecutor's office assessed the DNA result is groundbreaking, providing biological proof of the victim's final location. The hair was located beneath the epoxy layer, indicating the scene was repainted after the victim was present, most likely to conceal traces. Technical experts further noted that the epoxy at the sampling location was approximately 2 millimeters thicker than average, consistent with at least 2 additional coats, supporting the conclusion that the scene had been refreshed. This evidence not only confirmed Rachel had been there, but also suggested someone deliberately erased traces after her disappearance. During the cold case unit's internal meeting, Harper presented the full chain of evidence, the restored video with the male voice, impact sounds, and labored breathing, together with the new DNA result. She concluded that all data pointed to one location, warehouse number 4, and one person with direct connection, Marcus Tate. The official report, signed December 24, 2015, changed case hash 02RL175 status from inactive to active homicide review. Harper's final note that day read simply, first physical evidence proving the victim died or was killed at the West Temple studio lot. The DNA result is indisputable. After the DNA result confirmed Rachel Linden's presence at the West Temple warehouse, Detective Elaine Harper expanded the investigation to industrial supply transactions that might relate to floor surface treatment and epoxy paint during May 2002. Her goal was to determine whether Marcus Tate had personally performed the work or purchased additional materials after the test shoot, the last time Rachel was documented. Utah administrative records from that period were not yet fully digitized, but the cold case unit had access to the old commercial tax system containing scanned invoices from industrial suppliers. Harper submitted a formal request to the Utah Division of Corporations to search Tate's name and affiliated companies from March through June 2002. 1 week later, she received a list of 13 small and 2 large transactions Tate made at a building supply store in Murray. Among them, the invoice dated May 10, 2002, the same day Rachel disappeared, clearly listed industrial epoxy coating kit plus solvent cleaner degreaser type D, total $148, paid with Tate's personal credit card. In the store's notes section, the sales clerk had added, customer also asked about fast-acting epoxy remover, recommended type D. Harper immediately contacted the store, now under new ownership, but the old product records remained. In the archived sample storage, She located the technical data sheet for Type D degreaser, a solvent containing methylene chloride and toluene, compounds capable of dissolving epoxy resin within hours, commonly used for industrial paint stripping and metal surface cleaning. When the Utah Crime Lab chemistry section tested the warehouse epoxy samples, they detected trace amounts of toluene in the base layer at 0.4%, matching the chemical on the invoice. The comparative chemistry report stated, trace toluene solvent in the epoxy paint may originate from Type D degreaser. Composition identical, and dilution ratio approximately 1:250, consistent with product usage instructions on Marcus Tate's purchase receipt. This data strengthened the theory that Tate used the cleaning solvent to scrub the warehouse floor after the incident, before applying new epoxy. Harper noted in her report, transaction date coincides exactly with Rachel Linden's disappearance, purchased products highly likely used at the scene. Cross-checking revealed this invoice was absent from the financial records Tate provided police in 2002, indicating deliberate omission. The invoice copy was authenticated by the state tax authority and bore a handwritten signature matching Tate's residency file sample. The forensic chemistry section issued a supplemental conclusion. Trace toluene and methylene chloride present in micro quantities in the epoxy reflect pre-painting cleaning. These solvents are not components of the original paint formulation. The chemical evidence combined with the financial transaction clarified the scene. The epoxy layer that 2002 investigators considered normal had actually been cleaned with solvent before drying. An action only someone attempting to remove organic traces or blood would take. In her report to the Cold Case Unit Commander, Harper wrote, "Discovery of the Murray Supply transaction proves Marcus Tate purchased and used epoxy remover solvent on the exact day Rachel Linden disappeared. Solvent residues in the paint matched the product. This is physical and financial evidence supporting concealment." The report was signed and filed January 4, 2016, becoming the third supplemental document in the reopened investigation, marking the first time in years authorities obtained objective proof of human alteration to the West Temple warehouse crime scene. As physical and financial evidence began to solidify suspicions of concealment at warehouse number 4, Detective Elaine Harper broadened the investigation by locating individuals who worked or lived near the West Temple industrial area in 2002. Archived records showed the property company that owned the lot had employed an elderly security guard named Charles Givens, retired since 2006 and now living in Ogden. On January 8, 2016, Harper contacted him and arranged an interview at the local police station. Though over 70, Givens's memory remained sharp, and upon hearing Marcus Tate's name he reacted immediately. "I remember that guy. The young director who rented the warehouse at the end of the row, always working at night." Harper showed him 2002 photographs of the lot and lease documents. Givens confirmed the exact location was warehouse number 4, rented by Tate that spring. He said that throughout Tate's use of the building, Tate usually arrived in the mornings but several times returned very late, sometimes after midnight. Givens clearly recalled one particular night, because of the strong chemical odor that spread through the entire row, forcing him to leave his guard shack to get fresh air. When Harper asked for the specific date, he recalled early May 2002, near the weekend, when the weather was turning warm and he was on night shift. "I saw him arrive around 9 or 10 p.m., carrying several small containers, one cylindrical like a paint bucket. Then the door closed. Lights stayed on inside until almost dawn. The smell was like industrial paint. Had to open all the windows in the shack." When asked if he saw anyone else, Givens said no. He said Tate left the area in his small gray pickup truck around 3 or 4 in the morning. Harper recorded the entire statement and showed him the old duty roster from the property company. Coincidentally, May 10, 2002, the day Rachel disappeared, was indeed Givens' shift. This made his testimony especially valuable. He added that a few days later, Tate returned during the day with 2 younger men to carry out lighting equipment. He didn't remember who they were, only that afterward the warehouse was locked and no further activity was observed. When Harper asked why he hadn't reported anything in 2002, Givens explained, "Back then I just thought he was painting or filming something. I only learned about the missing girl much later. The interview lasted nearly 2 hours, was fully video recorded, and archived as UC 160119-01. Before concluding, Harper asked one final time about the chemical smell. Givens confirmed it was not ordinary paint, but sharp and choking, like industrial stripping solvent. He described it as, "It burned your throat, dried your mouth. I had to keep drinking water." The lab later compared his description with the known properties of type D degreaser, the exact product Tate purchased, and found complete correspondence in odor and volatility. The official witness report stated, "Statement of security guard Charles Givens provides independent evidence confirming tenant Marcus Tate was present at the scene on the night of May 10, 2002, using strong-smelling industrial chemicals. Timing matches the victim's disappearance." When correlated with the video and invoice data, Harper saw the entire timeline now aligned. The video ended the morning of May 10th. Tate purchased the solvent the same day, and the witness recalled the chemical odor that night. In her report to Cold Case Leadership, Harper noted, "Recorded and duty roster confirmed testimony of witness Givens strongly supports the scene alteration hypothesis. Neutral witness with no ties to any party accurately recalls the solvent odor, lighting, and cleanup behavior of the suspect." The interview concluded with Givens signing the statement, confirming everything was accurate to his recollection, and that no one had ever asked him about it before. It became the first witness statement in 14 years capable of placing Tate back at the scene at the exact time Rachel disappeared. After witness Charles Givens' statement was recorded and confirmed to match the timeline, Detective Elaine Harper shifted focus to reviewing electronic data to solidify the final timeline of Rachel Linden. Because in 2002 internet infrastructure was still limited, the original case file did not include IP address tracing. However, Yahoo, the email platform Rachel used while in college, had retained old activity logs on its servers in California. Harper submitted a legal request through the Utah State Prosecutor's Office to retrieve the account logs for Rachel's account for the period May 8, 2002. 3 weeks later, Yahoo's legal department provided a recovered data set from early backups containing 23 logins from the BYU student network and one unique additional login on May 10, 2002, at 11:16 a.m., just a few hours before Rachel was reported missing. The IP address for that login was recorded as 192.168.47.21, belonging to an internal network range of a small provider, Salt Lake Fiber Services, which at the time managed connections for the West Temple Industrial Park. When Harper sent a verification request, the ISP's archive system confirmed that this IP corresponded to an internal network node located at Warehouse Cluster 3-6 in the industrial park, which included Warehouse Hash 4 rented by Marcus Tate. This information meant Rachel's final email had been sent directly from the internal network of the warehouse complex, not from campus or her residence. Harper ordered the digital forensics team to recover the full content of that email. The copy showed a simple subject line, "Test light done, talk later," sent to a BYU classmate named Marissa Cole, with a short message, "We're done with the test shoot, I'll probably head back early." This message was never replied to by the recipient. Server timestamp and time zone analysis confirmed the exact send time as 11 hours, 16 minutes, and 48 seconds, AM Mountain Time, within the same window that the recovered video segment was estimated to end. Harper cross-referenced this data with Tate's 2002 statement, in which he said the shoot ran until noon. The two timelines matched perfectly, but the IP log proved Rachel had accessed the internet directly from Tate's warehouse, a detail no one had previously uncovered. Investigators also checked subsequent connection logs from her Yahoo account, but there were no logins after 11:16 a.m. that day. The connection went permanently silent from that moment. The technical report from the Utah State Office of Information Technology concluded the final login to the account Rachel Linden 02 at yahoo.com occurred from the West Temple internal network, node 192.168.47.21. No activity after 11:16 a.m. on May 10, 2002. The geographic location corresponds directly to warehouse hash 4. For the first time, electronic data provided a precise timestamp and location of the victim on the morning she disappeared. Harper wrote in her duty log, IP data confirms the victim's final email was sent from the internal network at the warehouse rented by Marcus Tate. The 11:16 a.m. mark is considered the last moment Rachel was alive. The report was submitted along with the Givens witness statement and the solvent purchase receipt, forming a unified chain of evidence. Tate was present at the warehouse that day. The victim was at the same location. There were signs of chemical use afterward, and the scene was repainted. In a memo to the cold case unit leadership, Harper concluded, IP analysis strengthens the entire event timeline. The victim's final location has been established with single address precision. This is the first digital anchor pinpointing the time and place Rachel Linden disappeared. After completing the video restoration, audio analysis, DNA testing in the epoxy, chemical verification, and IP log retrieval, Detective Elaine Harper began compiling a comprehensive forensic report for case hash 02RL175. She consolidated all data into a detailed file with 5 main sections. Section 1 summarized the recovered 42-second final video segment showing Rachel Linden inside the warehouse. A male voice commanding "stand still," followed by impact sounds and the noise of something heavy being dragged. Section 2 presented the audio analysis results, identifying a sequence of metallic clangs, labored breathing, and dragging of a heavy object consistent with forcible restraint, providing clues of violence. Section 3 detailed the DNA results from a hair strand found in the epoxy layer on the metal table, matching exactly the parental DNA reference for Rachel, confirming the victim's physical presence at the scene. Section 4 compiled the chemical analysis, in which the Type D degreaser epoxy remover purchased by Marcus Tate matched the chemical composition of samples found on the warehouse floor and table, proving the use of chemicals for cleanup. Section 5 presented the IP data and recovered Yahoo logs from Tate's warehouse internal network, establishing that Rachel's final email was sent from the network node at warehouse hash 4 at 11:16 a.m. on May 10, 2002, pinpointing her last known location. Harper conducted a linkage analysis of the datasets, comparing the video, audio, chemical, and IP timelines, and created a flowchart of the sequence of events from Rachel's arrival at the warehouse until the video signal cut out. The sequences aligned perfectly, reinforcing the hypothesis that Rachel was present at the warehouse, likely restrained, and came into contact with chemicals used by Marcus Tate either after she left or shortly after the incident. Harper compared witness statements with the technical analysis. Security guard Charles Givens' testimony about Tate appearing at night and a strong chemical smell matched the detected chemicals and IP timestamps, reinforcing timeline accuracy. The report also detailed evidence storage and preservation procedures, chain of custody coding, and timestamps to ensure legal admissibility and prosecutorial usability. Harper's conclusion stated clearly, the combined video, audio, DNA, chemical, and IP data provide sufficient physical and digital evidence to establish the victim's final location, time of disappearance, and the suspect Marcus Tate's direct involvement at the scene. The unified and independent chain of evidence proves Rachel Linden's presence at the West Temple warehouse on May 10, 2002, with clear signs of violence and subsequent scene tampering. The report was signed and forwarded to the cold case unit commander, with a copy archived in the electronic evidence vault in preparation for requesting an arrest warrant. In internal notes, Harper emphasized that this was the first time since the case was closed in 2002 that all physical, biological, digital, and witness elements had been comprehensively linked, creating a solid legal foundation for continued investigation and prosecution. The final note at the end of the report stressed, based on the current combined data, case hash 02RL175 has sufficient grounds to charge Marcus Tate with criminal conduct related to the disappearance. All data has been stored and sealed in accordance with legal regulations. This report marked a pivotal turning point, transforming a long-cold missing person case into an active criminal file with verifiable evidence ready for the next investigative steps to establish criminal liability and initiate legal proceedings against the suspect. On January 12, 2016, immediately after Detective Elaine Harper submitted her comprehensive forensic report, the Cold Case Unit presented the entire file to the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office for review of criminal charges against Marcus Tate. The file consisted of 412 pages of documents, including physical evidence, expert reports, witness statements, and digital datasets. District Attorney Daniel Reeves personally received the file and convened a 4-plus-hour evaluation meeting with the legal team and 2 forensic technicians. Reeves reviewed each item: the video showing the victim, audio containing signs of violence, DNA results confirming Rachel Linden's hair in the epoxy IP logs, proving her final email was sent from Tate's warehouse internal network, and receipts showing Tate purchased paint remover solvent on the day she disappeared. When measured against Utah's legal standards for circumstantial evidence, Reeves concluded the data chain fully met the threshold for prosecution. There is physical, technical, and independent witness evidence proving the suspect was at the scene, had direct contact with the victim, and engaged in concealment by erasing traces. In an internal memo he wrote, "Though circumstantial, the evidence is highly consistent and originates from multiple independent sources that cannot be explained by any innocent hypothesis." Harper was invited to present directly to the prosecution panel, explaining the connections between the data and how it was recovered. She stressed there was no possibility of random coincidence between Tate's actions and Rachel's disappearance timeline. Reeves agreed and directed the drafting of a formal arrest warrant application under Utah Code Section July 2, 77, listing anticipated charges of suspicion of homicide and evidence tampering. The warrant request was submitted to the district court judge at 2:30 p.m. that day. During the review hearing, Harper and the DA's representative presented the core evidence chain: the video segment, IP data, DNA results, and chemical receipts. The judge found the file logically sound and technically well supported. Although no body had been recovered, the evidence was strong enough to establish criminal conduct. After nearly an hour of review, at 4:05 p.m., the Salt Lake District Court signed and approved arrest warrant AR 160175 for Marcus Tate, effective statewide, authorizing Utah law enforcement to act immediately upon locating the suspect. The warrant specified charges of homicide, first degree, and tampering with physical evidence. Harper signed for a copy of the warrant and immediately contacted the regional FBI field office to coordinate locating Tate's current residence, as he had left Utah more than 10 years earlier. A copy of the warrant was filed in the Cold Case Unit's electronic system with Harper's final note. January 12, 2016, Salt Lake County DA approves arrest warrant for suspect Marcus Tate based on comprehensive forensic data in case #02RL175. Warrant effective immediately, statewide and nationwide. This marked the official milestone when the Rachel Linden missing person case transitioned from a cold file to an active criminal prosecution after nearly 14 years of dormancy. On the morning of January 14, 2016, 2 days after the Salt Lake District Court approved the arrest warrant, the Major Crimes Task Force execution team, working with the Cold Case Unit, located Marcus Tate's current whereabouts through residency records and social media information. Administrative databases showed Tate had returned to Utah in late 2015 and was working part-time at the BYU Salt Lake Center as a teaching assistant for a digital film production class. By 9 a.m., a 4-officer team, led by Detective Elaine Harper, was positioned in the parking lot of Lecture Hall 3 on South Temple Street. At 9:27 a.m., Tate arrived, driving a gray sedan and stepping out carrying a laptop bag. The task force approached from 2 directions and clearly announced the arrest warrant per procedure. Tate did not resist, appeared surprised, but remained calm, and asked the reason for the arrest. Harper read the warrant aloud, emphasizing the charges of first-degree homicide and tampering with physical evidence related to Rachel Linden's disappearance. He responded only, "I need to call my lawyer." Officers immediately handcuffed him, read his Miranda rights, and placed him in a transport vehicle while the forensics unit searched the car. In the trunk, they found 2 portable hard drives, a Dell laptop, and 3 USB drives. All were sealed on-site following electronic evidence seizure protocol. Upon arrival at Salt Lake City Police Headquarters, the devices were transferred to the State Digital Forensics Lab. During preliminary data imaging, technicians discovered a folder on the laptop named Work_Projects_2016, containing numerous unfinished documents related to short film scripts. One notable file, named SK_Project Doc, last edited in November 2015, was over 300 pages and formatted like a mix of personal diary and scene descriptions. Harper ordered full extraction of its contents for investigative retention. Meanwhile, Tate was taken to interview room 3 at headquarters. He remained silent, did not react when his rights were reread, and only confirmed he wanted counsel present before answering any questions. Officers noted his absolute calm demeanor, steady gaze, and even clear voice when responding to administrative procedures. Harper requested a buccal DNA swab for comparison with old evidence. Tate consented without objection. The report noted, "Suspect cooperative with procedure, refuses substantive questions. No signs of fear or panic." During the quick electronic device inventory, the team discovered the hard drives also contained over 120 GB of data, backed up from 2002, including photos, short video clips, and numerous digital journal files. Due to the large volume, they were sealed for later processing. Police photographed the entire seizure process and completed a receipt signed by both the Cold Case Unit and the Digital Forensics Division. By noon, Tate was moved to Central Holding to await his attorney, while Harper and DA Daniel Reeves planned next steps. The internal bulletin stated, "Suspect Marcus Tate taken into custody, without incident, at BYU Salt Lake Center. Evidence seized includes laptop, 2 portable hard drives, 3 USB drives, and personal vehicle. Notable file quote, SIC_project. Quote, discovered in work folder, contents not yet decoded." In her duty log that day, Harper wrote the final entry. Arrest of Marcus Tate, the only individual with direct connection to victim Rachel Linden, completed at 9:41 a.m. Suspect silent. Requests attorney. All digital storage devices seized and sealed, ready for transfer and analysis. Case #02RL175, officially moved to active investigation phase. With the execution of the warrant 14 years after the case was closed, the Utah investigative authorities completed the first step in the criminal prosecution process, marking the end of more than a decade of the Rachel Linden missing person cold case. The first interrogation of Marcus Tate took place on the morning of January 15, 2016, in Interrogation Room 2 of the Salt Lake Police Department, conducted directly by Detective Elaine Harper, with District Attorney Daniel Reeves present as observer. The entire session was recorded by 2 fixed cameras and lasted nearly 3 hours. Tate appeared in detention clothing, his face showing no signs of anxiety, hands clasped on the table, gaze steady. Harper began by reconfirming his legal rights and asking whether he was willing to answer questions without his attorney present. After several seconds of silence, Tate nodded and agreed to clear up the misunderstanding. Harper proceeded to present the evidence in investigative order. First, the recovered mini-DV tape footage from 2002, played on a small monitor placed in front of him. In the frame, Rachel Linden stood in front of the metal table inside the warehouse, light coming from the right corner, a male voice saying, "Stand still." Harper paused the video on the exact frame where Rachel turned her head. She said, "This is footage shot in the warehouse you rented in May 2002. Do you confirm the woman in the video is Rachel Linden?" Tate looked for a moment, then nodded slightly. Yes, that's her. This is the lighting test I told police about back then. When Harper asked about the male voice on the tape, Tate stated, "My voice, I was directing her posing for the test shoot." She continued to the final portion, where a loud impact and tilted image appeared, then stopped it. "How do you explain this part?" Harper asked. Tate answered slowly. "The camera fell to the floor. I remember the tripod leg shifted, Rachel tried to fix it, and it dropped. I told her to stop because the lighting wasn't right. Nothing else happened." He emphasized that the rest of the tape had no value beyond technical testing. Harper showed no reaction and moved on to the DNA documents, presenting the results of hair strands found within the epoxy layer on the metal table, matching Rachel's mother's DNA with 99.98% certainty. She asked, "Can you explain why Rachel's hair was beneath the epoxy layer you applied after the test shoot date?" Tate was silent for several seconds, then replied, "She was there, hair probably fell while working. I sealed the floor a few days later. Nothing strange about it. Just coincidence." Harper remained calm and produced copies of Tate's May 10, 2002, receipt for epoxy remover, along with the security guard's statement about smelling strong chemical odors that night. Tate reviewed them and shook his head. "I was prepping the floor for the actual shoot. I often worked late, and that solvent was to clean the old epoxy. Police asked me back then. I already explained." Harper nodded, made notes, then moved to the email logs. "Are you aware Rachel's final email was sent from the internal network inside the warehouse you rented?" Tate raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know, but it makes sense. She might have used my computer. I had the LAN on to check lighting." Harper did not interrupt, simply asked, "Can you confirm Rachel left the warehouse safely after the shoot?" Tate answered, "Yes. I walked her to her car around noon. She said she'd email me after revising the script. I never saw her again." When asked why he didn't contact police upon hearing she was missing, Tate said, "I thought she went home. When they contacted me, I cooperated. No one told me I'd done anything wrong." Harper noted, "Subject remains calm, answers technically oriented, no change in facial expression when viewing video or hearing DNA results." At the end, Reeves asked directly, "Do you deny that Rachel Linden died inside your warehouse?" Tate looked at him and stated firmly, "I completely deny it. She did not die there, and I did nothing wrong. Everything you're seeing is the result of a misunderstanding." When the session ended, Tate requested his attorney and refused to sign the transcript until counsel was present. Harper closed the file and wrote the final line. "Suspect denies all allegations, insists video is only test footage. Remains silent on direct accusations, displays no fear or panic." The first interrogation concluded at 12:47 p.m., marking the opening round in the confrontation between forensic evidence and the statements of a man previously considered merely a witness in a 14-year-old missing person case. The second interrogation took place 2 days later, January 17, 2016, in Interrogation Room 3 of the Salt Lake Police Department, attended by Detective Elaine Harper, District Attorney Daniel Reeves, and the court-appointed defense attorney for Marcus Tate. The atmosphere was heavier and more tense than the first session. Tate appeared tired, his eyes darker, hands tightly clasped across his chest. Harper opened by informing him that over the past 2 days, the tech lab had completed audio analysis of the video, confirming the presence of dragging sounds of a heavy object and labored breathing, coinciding with the male voice saying, "Stand still." She placed the spectrogram in front of Tate, pointing to the waveform spikes, showing impact and sliding noises. "We can prove this was not the tripod falling," Harper said slowly. "It is the sound of a heavy object being dragged across the floor." Tate looked at the paper and remained silent. Harper continued cross-referencing, "Rachel's hair beneath the epoxy you applied after May 10th. Her final email sent from your warehouse network the same day you bought paint remover. Every data point converges on one conclusion. Do you have anything to say?" Tate sighed, leaned back, eyes fixed on the wall as if weighing options. After nearly a minute of silence, he spoke softly, in a low and hoarse voice. "It wasn't intentional. I didn't mean to hurt her. Harper stopped writing and looked directly at him. Be specific. Tate swallowed, hands trembling slightly. We argued. During the test shoot, she slipped, fell, and hit her head on the edge of the table. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. The room fell completely silent. Harper asked, "What did you do next?" Tate lowered his head, voice breaking. I thought she was dead. I didn't call anyone. I was scared that if police came, they would think I killed her. I just wanted to clean it up. Reeves interjected. How exactly did you clean it up, Mr. Tate? Tate closed his eyes and answered quietly. I wiped the blood, then bought solvent. I resealed the floor. I couldn't think of anything else. Harper opened the file, turned to the Type D solvent records and matching chemical traces at the scene, reading each detail aloud. You lied about the receipt, the resurfacing, working that night. It's all in the reports. Tate looked up, exhausted. I know, I just wanted to forget it. I didn't murder her, I swear. Harper kept her tone even. You can prove that by telling the truth. Where is Rachel Linden's body? The question stopped, Tate cold. He twisted the rubber bracelet on his wrist, took a deep breath, then said slowly, I took her away. I didn't bury her nearby. I drove out of the city, about 20 miles west of Salt Lake, the abandoned mining area near Magna. There's a dirt turnoff. I went in there. Harper pressed, Can you show us the exact spot? Tate nodded, voice shaking. If I show you, what do you promise me? Harper replied. No deals. We only want the truth. If it truly was an accident, this is your only chance to prove it. Tate bowed his head, silent for a long time, then whispered, I'll take you there. I can't keep this secret anymore. Harper signaled the technician to note the time of the statement change, then had Tate sign that he was voluntarily providing information and agreeing to assist in locating the site. His attorney nodded, confirming the client consented. As he left the room, Tate looked down at the table and repeated only, It was an accident. I didn't mean to. In the immediate post-interrogation summary, Harper wrote, Suspect changed statement. Admitted presence at scene when victim died. Described cause as accidental fall. Admitted altering the scene and agreed to lead authorities to burial location. Statement recorded on audio-video, attorney present, signed voluntarily. At 9:40 p.m. the transcript was completed, and the investigation team was directed to prepare for the field trip the following morning, based on Marcus Tate's directions. On the morning of January 18, 2016, a convoy consisting of 2 patrol units, 1 forensic van, and 1 command SUV left Salt Lake Police Headquarters at 7:30 a.m., heading west on Highway 201. Marcus Tate sat in the back seat of the specialized SUV, hands cuffed in front, flanked by 2 officers. Detective Elaine Harper sat in the front, silently watching him through the rearview mirror. January sky was slate gray, low clouds and strong wind. Ahead lay the barren land near Magna, where old copper mine workings were scattered across semi-desert terrain. When the vehicles turned off the main road, Tate pointed southwest, voice steady but hoarse. Follow this dirt track about 1.5 miles, there's a broken fence. I stopped there. The convoy halted in a remote area with no signs or houses. Dry, cracked soil, sparse weeds and scrap metal, wind whipping up fine dust. Harper and 2 investigators stepped out. Tate had 1 cuff removed so he could point. Escorted closely by 2 officers, he walked slowly, eyes on the ground, avoiding contact. After about 100 yards, he stopped in front of a shallow depression covered by dry grass. Beside a rusted sign, reading No Trespassing. Old mine property. Tate took a deep breath and pointed at the pit. I think here. I don't remember every inch, but around here. Harper ordered the tech team to mark the area and cordon a 10-meter radius. They used ground-penetrating radar. A return signal at approximately 60 centimeters depth indicated an anomaly. The forensic team began digging. The hard, dry soil made shovels ring. Less than 10 minutes later, An officer uncovered a patch of faded white fabric at the edge. A few more strokes revealed bright-colored nylon, mixed in the dirt, wrapped around bone-like objects. Harper approached, crouched, and saw a small bone end protruding grayish-yellow, still caked with dry sand. The technician confirmed, human bone, most likely forearm. Excavation was immediately paused to initiate formal forensic protocol. The area was taped off. Tate was moved several yards away under tight watch. He kept his head down, lips pressed together, silent. The forensic team resumed controlled recovery, removing soil layer by layer. One by one more bones appeared, a rib fragment, a shattered skull section, several pieces of white nylon, wrapped around them with knots, still visible at one end. Deeper, a small metal object glinted. A technician extracted it with tweezers, rinsed it with deionized water. A plain silver ring engraved, by you, 2002, and tiny RL on the inner band. Harper stared at the ring for a long time. She remembered Rachel Linden's file, by you class of 2002. The missing graduation ring her family had reported along with her disappearance. Piece by piece, the evidence rose from the earth, human bones and shreds of nylon in red dirt, creating a heavy silence. Police filmed the entire process, recorded exact GPS coordinates, noting the burial at the edge of the old mine west of Magna, approximately 30 kilometers from Salt Lake City. That day's recovery yielded skull fragments, ribs, forearm, pelvis, and several smaller bones, all sealed in numbered evidence bags and transported to the state lab. Also recovered, 3 pieces of nylon, 1 silver ring, a fragment of light-colored fabric believed to be a jacket, and a short length of rotted parachute cord. Harper ordered photographs of Tate at the scene for the record. He stood motionless, eyes down, no reaction. When asked, "Do you confirm this is where you buried Rachel Linden's body?" Tate nodded faintly and said softly, "I think so. I only remember doing it at night." The answer was audio and video recorded as evidence. By late afternoon, as darkness fell, the forensic team finished collecting surrounding soil samples for chemical traces. Harper surveyed the empty landscape, wind-rustling dry grass, leaning power poles, and eerie quiet. She signed off on the excavation at 5:25 p.m., and the convoy left the scene under a blood-red desert sunset. In the end-of-day report, Harper wrote, "Per Marcus Tate's statement, the investigation team located a shallow grave in the abandoned Magna mining area containing human remains, nylon fragments, and a silver ring engraved RL, consistent with victim Rachel Linden. Scene coordinates recorded and secured, forensic evidence transferred to state lab for identification. The bones and exhibits recovered from the Magna abandoned mine were delivered to the Utah State Forensic Laboratory on the night of January 18, 2016. The following morning, the examination team, led by Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Helen Ward, began work. All remains were cleaned with enzyme solution and controlled temperature dried to remove soil, nylon and contaminants before sorting. The preliminary report determined approximately 78% of an adult human skeleton was recovered, including skull, ribs, scattered vertebrae, pelvis, and upper limbs. No animal gnaw marks were present, indicating sufficiently deep burial with minimal environmental exposure. Morphological analysis confirmed female sex. Biological age, 22, 25 years. Stature matching Rachel Linden's missing person description. The skull showed a circumferential fracture extending from the frontal to the right temporal bone, characteristic of blunt object with an edge, causing spreading fracture and skull depression. Ward noted, injury occurred perimortem or immediately antemortem, sufficient to cause fatal traumatic brain injury with rapid death. Additionally, inner rib surfaces showed embedded epoxy paint fragments, likely transferred when the body contacted the warehouse floor. Analysis of recovered nylon confirmed industrial polyethylene, consistent with wrapping material remaining in Tate's 2002 warehouse. The silver ring engraved by OE 2002 RL was cleaned and photographed, The hand engraving matched photographs previously supplied by Rachel's family. For definitive identification, the DNA lab extracted samples from femoral marrow and compared them to reference samples from Rachel Linden's parents stored in the database. On January 21, 2016, results were released. Nuclear and mitochondrial DNA matched Rachel Linden's profile with error probability less than 1 in 10 billion. The forensic report stated, victim positively identified as Rachel Linden, born 1979, missing May 2002. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the skull. Histological analysis shows no pre-existing pathology. The conclusion was signed by Dr. Ward and immediately forwarded to Detective Harper at the Cold Case Unit. Upon receiving the nearly 80-page report, Harper opened to the first page, read the bold heading cause of death, blunt force trauma to skull, then quietly closed the file and sat in silence for a long time. This was the moment that ended 14 years of unanswered questions. Rachel Linden's body had been found, and every physical trace, DNA, chemicals, personal items, matched the West Temple warehouse scene perfectly. In her internal memo that day, Harper wrote, "Forensic examination confirms female victim, age consistent with Rachel Linden, death by blunt force trauma to skull, DNA match absolute, evidence sufficient to establish homicide rather than accident." This closes the recovery phase and formally classifies the case as murder. Dr. Ward's report, scene photographs, the silver ring, and nylon fragments were entered into case #02 RL 175 under recovered remains, identification confirmed. Based on these results, the Rachel Linden file status was updated to homicide, confirmed. Immediately after the forensic examination confirmed that the remains found at the Magna mine belonged to Rachel Linden, the Cold Case Unit proceeded to fully reconstruct the entire chain of events based on Marcus Tate's statements, physical evidence, digital data, and accumulated forensic records from 2002 to 2016. The reconstruction was presented in the report titled Event Reconstruction, Case #02 RL 175, which described the sequence of the incident in detail. According to the comprehensive analysis, Rachel Linden left her apartment in Provo on the morning of May 10, 2002, to go to the West Temple warehouse for a lighting test session for Tate's film project. Recovered video data confirmed the filming time as 11:16 a.m. that same day, consistent with the final email log sent from the warehouse's internal network. During the shoot, Rachel stood in front of the central metal table while Tate directed the lighting and operated the camera. Audio analysis revealed a male voice commanding "stand still," followed by the sound of impact and labored breathing, clearly indicating coercion and a fearful reaction. Combined with the cranial trauma findings in the forensic report, the investigative team determined that Rachel's time of death coincided with the moment the video abruptly cut off. The weapon was inferred to be a blunt object with an edge, most likely a metal bar or part of a tripod frame present in the warehouse, causing instantaneous skull fracture. After realizing the victim was dead, Tate remained at the scene throughout the afternoon, attempting to erase traces. Chemical analysis showed he used Type D degreaser solvent to clean the floor and metal table surfaces, then applied a new layer of epoxy paint to cover blood or biological tissue. The presence of toluene in the epoxy confirmed this action. When night fell, Tate locked the door, took some of Rachel's personal belongings, including her purse and ring, and left the warehouse. Witness Charles Given's statement confirmed that Tate returned between 9 and 10 p.m. that night carrying chemical containers and stayed until dawn, matching the solvent usage timeline. The next morning, Tate loaded the remaining items into his vehicle, including Rachel's body, wrapped in nylon and a few other objects, and drove west to the abandoned Magna mine. There, he dug a shallow grave and buried the body, along with a silver graduation ring, nylon, and wrapping cloth. The geological report determined that the soil compression in the grave was consistent with the body's weight and had been leveled with a metal shovel, a tool matching Tate's equipment. Afterward, Tate returned to the warehouse, packed up the gear, cleaned the paint dust, and resumed work as usual. Throughout the 2002 investigation, he maintained a cooperative attitude and provided consistent statements, causing the case to be temporarily closed due to lack of evidence. 14 years later, with advances in forensic technology, the chain of evidence closed completely. The video and audio proved the violent act. DNA in the epoxy layer confirmed the victim's presence at the scene. Solvent invoices and witness testimony about chemical odors confirmed floor treatment. IP logs established the victim's last alive timestamp, and the body recovered at the Magna mine validated the cause of death conclusion. The reconstruction simulated the entire sequence within an 8-hour window from when Rachel left home until Tate departed the scene. 3D graphics from the Utah Crime Lab showed the impact location on the metal table, matched Rachel's height, and the force direction from the right, consistent with the right side skull fracture in the forensic report. Behavioral analysis indicated Tate acted alone with no accomplices. Every step of scene processing aligned with the habits of someone with cinematic technical knowledge, utilizing lighting, camera, and paint layers to control surfaces. Harper concluded in her report, Marcus Tate caused the death of Rachel Linden during the test shoot, then concealed it using chemicals and epoxy paint, transported the body to the Magna mine for burial. Deliberate conduct, not an accident. All physical, chemical, and biological evidence is consistent, ruling out alternative scenarios. The reconstruction report was signed January 25, 2016, marking the completion of establishing the event sequence and solidifying a strong legal foundation for the criminal prosecution file against Marcus Tate. On January 27, 2016, after the case reconstruction was finalized and signed, Detective Elaine Harper and the Cold Case Unit leadership officially transferred the entire case #02RL175 file to the Utah State Attorney's Office to prepare criminal charges against Marcus Tate. The file consisted of 18 volumes of documents, 5 hard drives containing digital data, and all physical evidence sealed and handed over according to federal protocol. Salt Lake County Prosecutor Daniel Reeves, working with the state attorney's office, determined specific charges based on the evidence: murder in the second degree, tampering with physical evidence, and unlawful disposal of human remains. Reeves' summary report stated, video, DNA, chemical, and independent witness evidence established that Marcus Tate caused Rachel Linden's death, concealed the scene with solvent and epoxy paint, then transported and buried the body at the Magna mine. The conduct was intentional and planned concealment, constituting second-degree murder. The state legal office immediately initiated pre-prosecution procedures, drafted a preliminary indictment and trial schedule. Harper was summoned as the primary investigative witness, while Utah Crime Lab forensic technicians were listed as expert witnesses. The preliminary indictment, signed January 29, 2016, formally named Marcus Tate defendant on 3 counts and was sent directly to the Utah Supreme Court for the initial hearing. The trial, State of Utah, Marcus Tate, opened on March 14, 2016, at the Utah Supreme Court, Courtroom 5, presided over by Judge Eleanor Whitford. The prosecution was led by Daniel Reeves, while defendant Marcus Tate was represented by 2 court-appointed defense attorneys. On the first morning, the courtroom was packed with Rachel Linden's family, press, and Cold Case Unit members. Tate entered wearing a gray suit, face calm, avoiding eye contact with the public gallery. When the judge asked how he pleaded, Tate replied briefly, "Not guilty." Following opening procedures, the prosecution summarized the case, emphasizing it was the result of 14 years of investigation and scientific evidence, recovery showing Rachel Linden was killed in the West Temple warehouse and her body buried at the Magna mine. A jury of 12 was impaneled to evaluate all evidence. On the second day, the prosecution played the restored forensic mini-DV video segment, showing Rachel in frame in front of the metal table, a male voice ordering "stand still," then violent shaking and cut off. The courtroom fell completely silent, except for speaker static. Reeves then called audio expert Laura Brenner to testify, presenting spectrograms proving impact sounds and dragging of a heavy object after the male voice, demonstrating the sequence of violence. Next, the prosecution displayed excavation photos from Magna, human bones emerging from dry soil, nylon wrapping and the silver ring engraved BIU 2002 RL in an evidence box. Rachel's family sat silently, many wiping tears. Forensic pathologist Dr. Helen Ward presented findings: female, biological age 23, cause of death blunt force cranial trauma. DNA 100% matched to parent samples. Enlarged images of the depressed skull fracture filled the screen, the atmosphere heavy. Harper was called on the third day. She detailed the investigation process, videotape recovery, solvent invoice verification, IP log retrieval, DNA discovery in epoxy. She explained how the cold case unit pieced together a long-forgotten case over more than a decade and stated, "Every piece of evidence points to one location and one person, Marcus Tate." Defense counsel attempted to argue the video was merely a test shoot for the film Glass Angel, and the cranial injury could have been accidental from falling equipment or lighting. However, the prosecution countered with forensic audio and chemical results, proving solvent use on the floor could only have been to remove blood. When permitted to speak, Tate remained silent, only whispering briefly to his attorney. When the judge asked if he wished to testify in his own defense, he shook his head. Reeves presented additional financial evidence, May 10, 2002 solvent purchase receipt and security guard, Charles Given's testimony confirming seeing Tate working late that night, with strong chemical odors around the warehouse. The courtroom again fell silent as the prosecution played Tate's second interrogation excerpt. "I thought she was dead. I just wanted to clean up." The recording played dryly, Tate's voice tired but clear. Defense objected, claiming the statement was made under mental exhaustion, but the judge overruled because counsel was present. After 5 consecutive trial days, the entire evidence chain, video, audio, DNA, chemicals, emails, and statements, was presented to the jury. Reeves closed by saying, "Science does not lie. Rachel Linden did not fall. She was struck, and Marcus Tate was the only person there, the only one with motive to conceal." Throughout, Tate maintained an expressionless face, occasionally glancing at the screen without emotion. The jury was sent to deliberate for 2 days. Judge Whitford reminded them to decide independently, based solely on scientific facts and verified testimony. When the session adjourned Thursday afternoon, Harper left the courtroom, stood in the hallway, looking through the glass at wind whipping the Wasatch Range. After 14 years, the evidence had finally spoken for the one who could not. After 2 tense days of deliberation, on the morning of March 21, 2016, the 12-member jury of the Utah Supreme Court returned to Courtroom 5 to deliver the verdict in State of Utah v. Marcus Tate. Judge Eleanor Whitford sat calmly but sternly on the bench, asking everyone to rise as the jury entered. The thick silence prolonged. Harper sat behind Prosecutor Reeves, clutching the notebook that had accompanied her through the final 3 months of investigation. Across the aisle, Tate sat straight-backed, hands clasped, eyes fixed ahead, expression blank. The clerk read the first question aloud. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreperson, a silver-haired middle-aged man, stood holding the paper. "Yes, Your Honor." He handed it to the clerk, who read loudly. "On the charge of murder in the second degree, under Utah Code Section 765203, the jury finds defendant Marcus Tate guilty. On the charge of tampering with physical evidence, guilty. On the charge of unlawful disposal of human remains, guilty." The courtroom was silent for several seconds, then soft gasps and chair creaks. Rachel Linden's family in the front row, her mother covering her face, her father bowing his head into his hands. Harper gripped her notebook tightly, eyes fixed on the bench. Reeves nodded slightly, while defense counsel looked down silently. Judge Whitford confirmed the verdict, then thanked the jury. "The court appreciates your service in this long case." After dismissing the jury, sentencing was scheduled for the afternoon. At 2 p.m., Tate was brought back, hands still cuffed in front. The judge read each penalty sections. Considering the seriousness of the offense, systematic concealment, and prolonged harm to the victim's family, the court sentences Marcus Tate to 25 years imprisonment at Utah State Prison. No parole consideration for the first 15 years. For evidence tampering and unlawful remains disposal, an additional concurrent 10-year term. The courtroom remained silent, except for the judge's gavel striking wood 3 times closing the 14-year case. Tate stood motionless, only briefly glancing toward Rachel's family, then looking away. When asked if he wished to address the court, he quietly said, "No." Defense counsel spoke for him. "My client respects the verdict and will exercise his right to appeal." The judge nodded and ordered the defendant remanded to state custody pending transfer. Harper sat motionless, watching the scene. For over 10 years, Rachel Linden's missing person file had been thin, a few faded pages. Now every piece of evidence, DNA, video, chemicals, statements, had told the truth. After the trial ended, media gathered on the courthouse steps, cameras and recorders aimed at Prosecutor Reeves. He said briefly, "This is a victory for investigative science and persistence. But more importantly, justice for Rachel Linden has finally been served." The victim's family emerged, the mother whispering, "We waited 14 years to hear the words guilty. Today, we can let our daughter rest." Harper stood quietly in a corner of the courtyard, away from the crowd, looking toward the distant hazy mountains. In her internal report, completed March 22, she wrote, "Jury verdict, unanimous. Sentence 25 years, no parole, first 15. Case #02RL 175 status, changed to case closed, May 2016, upon archive completion." In the following weeks, Utah Department of Justice administrative units sealed evidence, backed up data, and transferred copies to the National Archive. The original mini-D tape, solvent receipt, and silver ring were sealed in acrylic boxes at the Historical Evidence Vault under identifier RL 175-2016. On May 10, 2016, exactly 14 years after Rachel disappeared, the Cold Case Unit held a brief meeting to close the file. Harper read the final announcement to the team. Based on the court decision and executed sentence, the Rachel Linden case is considered resolved. All documents and evidence transferred to State Archive System. File status. Case closed, May 2016. In the small room, no one spoke. They only nodded in silence, a tribute to the lost young woman. Harper looked around, morning light streaming through the window, onto the fingerprint-smudged table and stacked files. She gently closed her notebook, the last page, bearing blue ink words, "Rachel Linden, found, 2016. Outside, late spring Utah sky was clear and cold wind blowing through aspen rows. The longest investigation of her career had ended, no triumph, only emptiness mixed with peace. Marcus Tate was incarcerated at Utah State Prison, inmate record, noting eligible for parole review. 2031. The Linden family received Rachel's cremated remains after examination and held a small memorial in Provo, where she had studied and dreamed of filmmaking. A white stone marker on BYU grounds reads, "Rachel Linden, 1979, 2002. Justice found." And with the final line in the summary, the Utah State Electronic Archive displays permanent status, case closed, May 2016. The Rachel Linden case, a young student murdered by someone she trusted in a creative environment, reflects a persistent modern American anxiety. The boundary between passion, technology, and hidden danger when trust is misplaced. The story demonstrates the power of forensic science, from a 42-second video clip, a hair trapped in epoxy, to an email log sent from the warehouse network, all seemingly meaningless in 2002. But 14 years later, forming the foundation that allowed Utah's Cold Case Unit to restore the full truth. In a society where technology permeates every corner of life, the lesson is not only for investigators, but for every individual. Every action, every piece of data, no matter how small, leaves a trace. Rachel's disappearance, while participating in a seemingly harmless film project, serves as a reminder of the importance of vigilance, especially for today's American youth, who frequently meet, collaborate, or date online. The case also illustrates the value of persistence in delivering justice. Detective Elaine Harper represents not only law enforcement, but the belief that no case is too old for truth. The modern United States, where faith in justice sometimes wavers, this case affirms that technological progress and professional ethics can still work together to deliver delayed but necessary justice. The final lesson is trust the power of evidence, memory, and people, because that is what forms the identity and foundation of American justice. Thank you for following the story of the Rachel Linden case, a 14-year journey for justice in stormy Utah. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring cases thought long asleep, but still whispering in America's shadows.